life.
Hello, Shari. What a debate and what a game changer for Peter Dutton. Extraordinary stuff in the past hour over on the ABC. Full analysis with Team Red, Team Blue and the team in the middle in a moment or two's time. But first, the count. Actually, the halfway point. Why? Because we have just 17 days until the election, 6 until early voting starts. For the past hour, the Prime Minister and Alternative Prime Minister have been debating on the ABC and their Western Sydney studios. No audience, no worms, no one but you to decide who won and who lost. And those of us who've been waiting, hoping for the moment that Peter Dutton went on attack, well, it was there. Time and time and time again. Here are the 5 things I think you need to know about this debate. This was good stuff from Peter Dutton, and those of us that have been cheering him on, well, we were punching the air tonight.
We approach the 3rd of May. Many Australians will be asking themselves, are you better off today than you were 3 years ago? People have seen food prices go up by 30%. Their mortgages have gone up on 12 occasions. Over the last 2 years, the government's brought in 1 million people, all of whom want homes, and all of whom are competing against young Australians for that rental property or to purchase a home. That's 1 million people, which is 70% higher than at any 2-year period in our country's history. Anthony, your government has modelled negative gearing changes and CGT changes.
Well,
the Treasurer has done that.
That's not right.
Well, it is actually right. This Prime Minister has a problem with the truth, and it's not just in relation to this debate. There are many aspects that you could pick up during the course of this campaign. The Prime Minister constantly telling people that they're much better off now just defies the reality in their own lives. There are 30,000 small businesses which have gone bankrupt over the course of the last 3 years, a record number in our country's history over the last 12 months. Households have been in a recession for 7 consecutive quarters, almost 2 years. There's been a 3-fold increase in the expansion of the public service compared to the Rudd-Gillard years.
So where do you cut?
We have the highest per capita rate of public servants in the world.
It was fantastic. Honestly, I can't wait to see what everyone else thought about it, but I thought that was one of the best displays I've seen in a debate. Not harsh, not aggressive, not nasty, but just hold the issue, turn the defence into attack. It was very well done, very well prepared. As for Anthony Albanese, he had many bad moments, but his worst moment was on a central question. 3 years ago, it was $275 cut in power bills. He was held to that account tonight by David Spears, and we'll have more to say about his moderation of this debate in a moment. But he has no answers on when power bills are going to go down because he wants to avoid what has been the failure of his promise last time. I'm going to show you the entirety of a back and forth that I think was very bad for the Prime Minister.
You and Chris Bowen keep saying that renewables are the cheapest form of power. When will we see our power bills come down?
They are. Well, what we know is that renewables are the cheapest form of power, not because of what we say, but because of what the Australian Energy Market Operator says.
So when do the bills come down?
And what the market is delivering. See, Peter has to have government, state, taxpayer-funded...
Can we stick with your plan for a moment?
Taxpayer-funded proposals. What we're dealing with here, during the former government, 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure. We need to get supply and certainty in energy security. We can't wait to the 2040s for a nuclear plant.
Just stick with your plan, Mr Albanese. When will the bills come down?
Under our plan, we know that renewables are the cheapest form of power, and that is why we are doing that, rolling it out, including through gas. Peter raised gas. Gas is now $13. It was $30.
And when does it get cheaper?
When we came off, 13 is cheaper than 30.
When do we see the bills come down?
Well, what we need to do is to roll out renewables, make sure there's energy security, make sure it's backed up by batteries, by hydro and by gas. That is what all of the private sector is backing and investing in.
I mean, take your pick. Oh, the Peter Dutton thing is all about taxpayers' money. Remember, they're spending $20 billion on rewiring the nation because they're trying to tell you that the 3-wheeled car is going to be able to win Bathurst. It can't. It may one day, but it can't today. Let alone the billions of dollars in subsidies, government payments, let alone the destruction of the earth in order to save the atmosphere and all of that, because Australia is 1% of the world's problem. China continues to thumb its nose at the rest of the world. Don't forget, of course, that many of the products that this government is saying we have to put in by law in solar and wind are made by slave labour in China. Terrible, terrible answer. Prime Minister doesn't have a number, doesn't even have a trajectory. It's just renewables are cheaper. The problem is they have to be built. And as I have sat here for 15 years, I have talked not about the existence of climate change, but the cost of the transition. The CSIRO told us years ago it was $1 trillion to go from what was the system to the new system. All of that either comes from the taxpayer or it goes to a private company. The private company then sends it on to you as a bill. This bloke is a champion, world champion gaslighter. But when he came up against a bloke who was willing to call him out and the questions, which were spectacular, he just fumbles. He was terrible tonight. I know his champions will say it doesn't matter, move on. A draw is enough. This is not a draw. I'm telling you, I watched it. It is not a draw. Which brings us to the moderation. Now, you know David Spears and I worked here for a long time together. In fact, the very first election I ever covered was in 2004 when I was a kid and he was basically a teenager. I thought he was spectacular tonight because the questions were not about gotchas, but instead the questions were, you know what, let's get off script. I know you've got an answer on this and you've got an answer on that and you can tell me what you're doing on housing and you can tell me what you're going to do when it comes to petrol. No, I'm going to shape the questions in a way that forces them to have to think on their feet. And when they tried to move back to the stump speech, he wouldn't let them do it. Honestly, Spearsy, 10 out of 10, mate. Well done.
Can you honestly say that your plans will make housing any more affordable? Australians who'll ultimately have to pay for the debt here, Mr Albanese. What do you say to them? Where's the money going to come from? Are your cuts to the public service going to be enough to cover it all? What's the one big change you'd like to be remembered for? What's your one big reform about some elements of the renewables rollout, particularly offshore wind in places like the Hunter in New South Wales? What do you say to those locals and those local community concerns? When will we see our power bills come down?
Well done, Spearsy. I know that doesn't help you with the mates, on Blue Scope or whatever that thing is, Blue Sky, whatever the lefty version of Twitter is. But for those of us who've watched you and admired for a while, it was great to see those questions. And those who think that he was doing anything other than the people's work, well, I think you just wanted him to be holding the hands and asking the questions that the Green Left wanted asked. I thought it was good. Get them off the script, get them off the separate answers, pull them back onto some stuff that makes them have to think on their feet. Also, Prime Ministers hit after hit after hit, or should I say lie after lie after lie, they missed the mark. Take your pick on how these worked. What about this garbage that he had to say about superannuation, which, remember, is only for first home buyers, but he pretends it's for any and everyone who's going to put their hand up at an auction for the next 12 months. Have a look at this for a swing and a miss.
If you give everyone super access to up to $50,000 and everyone at the auction will just have $50,000 more.
And of course the debt. On their watch, this budget this year, not some right-wing think tank. I didn't pull the number out of my ample backside. No, $1 trillion in their own books that they will swear by, as if it is the truly holy text of the great Saint Jim Chalmers. $1.2 trillion. But the gaslighter-in-chief, he wants you to think the debt's going down. It's going up.
We are the only government in the last 20 years that have produced consecutive budget surpluses, and we've halved the deficit this year as a direct result of the responsible economic management that we have. Debt is $177 billion less.
And then when it comes to the nuclear situation, and I mispronounce it as badly as he does, have a look at this again. Swing and a miss from the Housing Commission boy, of course, who's just the same as you. I'll forget the $1 million property on the hill. No, he's just like us.
That's before they get to the $600 billion they need for their nuclear reactors. I mean,
there you go again, Anthony. It just rolls off your lips like it's true.
We know what happened last time. The cuts came to health, they came to education, $50 billion out of hospitals, $30 billion out of schools.
This bloke is so shameless in his lies, all right? Which is far left group turns around and makes up a number about how much it's going to cost when it comes to nuclear. They get to $600 billion. The CSIRO, that far right-wing think tank, says that it's between half and $1 trillion. Half, $500 billion, and $1,000 billion for the transition that he would prefer. Now, all of this gets the heads nodding in the drum circles of some universities around the country, but in the real world, it's garbage. Both of their plans are very expensive. But one is one that will make sure that 24/7 there is support for the grid. The other, I repeat, it's the three-wheel car they're telling you is going to set a new lap record at Bathurst. It won't happen. And it certainly won't happen without the mega costs associated. Time and time again. And then, of course, we've got to talk about Donald Trump. Ooga booga.
When President Trump made the announcement that every single country in the world would be hit with tariffs, the alternative Prime Minister suggested that we should put defence and our defence relationship with the United States on the bargaining table.
Forgive me, that is bullshit. So, fifth and final. Dutton won this. He won it clean, he won it clear, and even it'll take, a few group texts for the lefties to work out what the pushback is, because I can't see it. Did Albo have his moments? Sure, everyone does in a debate. But if you're actually paying attention here, Dutton was on the attack. The PM had the worst moment, a sustained worst moment. The questions pull him off script, which means Albo is all at sea. Remember, he's trying to tell you everything's better when you know everything's worse than it was 3 years ago. When he tries to throw a lie, you know them not to be true. That's why I say Dutton won by a country mile.